Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Marco Figueroa, a CSO 30 award winner who's the Senior Manager of Cyber Security, Risk and Compliance at the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Marco is a leader working at the intersection of government, technology and cyber resilience. From fiduciary duties to MFA to emerging AI risks, we'll explore how directors can better navigate the evolving cyber landscape.
Thank you, John. It's a real pleasure to be here. Cybersecurity today is not just a technical issue, it's a leadership issue.
Absolutely.
And I think the fact that we're having this conversation in a boardroom context speaks volumes about how far the conversation has evolved.
I agree with you completely. Moving it from a technical discussion to a business discussion held in the boardroom, that's absolutely key to making progress on many of these problems we face. So, we say it's a board level issue, but why do you think it should be a board level issue and not just an IT concern?
It goes beyond the IT, the scope of IT. This has to be led by strong leadership from the top, from the board. It's about doing things right. If cyber is not considered from the beginning and it's done after the event, we will be able to see a number of unsatisfactory performances that will affect credibility on the organization, it will affect trust, and most importantly, can remove support from the shareholders.
Yeah, it's certainly important that we actually stay up with it. With the directors, so we're getting a lot of pressure put back on directors. Generally, they view themselves as having fiduciary responsibility for an organisation. This is a whole new class of risk they've got to manage. How do you suggest they go about that?
So I think in Australia we have clear evidence of those obligations. So it's not just about looking at the duty of care, diligence, etc., things that directors have been doing for quite a long time. It's all about tying this with the strategic outcomes of the organization, looking at cyber as an enabler and looking at this from a risk governance framework. And I think that's the important part, because company directors are very familiar with the risk language, and that's exactly why these individuals are holding those sessions. They're holding those positions in their organizations because they have very strong leadership, they have very strong understanding of risk, likelihood and consequence. And if we use that same rigor in the cyber field, we should be able to overcome the number of obligations that we have, not just in Australia, but around the world. CP234 is certainly an APRA regulation that mandates this, and governance is certainly the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see that the risks we're talking about here should be kept in a separate IT risk register or moved into the more general risk register for the business?
I think there are two components. We will need certainly a detailed risk register, and we can aggregate those risks into the enterprise risk register quite nicely. So we can focus on the critical field that really matter.
So technical risks and sort of systemic technology risks.
Correct, yes.
Oh, that's a very nice idea. I like that.
Yes.
What questions do you think the directors should be asking of the technology teams, and how should the technology teams respond to those questions in today's world?
I like that question, because in reality, traditionally the question has been, are we secure? So there is no such a thing.
Yeah.
The real questions that should be asked are related to, have we tested our disaster recovery plan? Have we identified the crown jewels of the organization? And are we doing phishing campaigns in the organization? So those are the fundamental questions that boards should be asking. Human resilience is very important and very rarely is spoken in those environments.
I like the set of questions you recommended just then, because they can be applied at any business.
Absolutely.
And so they're reasonably technology agnostic, and they come out as applicable to every business. That's, I think, something directors have been missing, is having those questions that can be asked on multiple boards and have sensible answers.
Correct. What we see today is, unfortunately, we have the wrong metrics. And by having the wrong metrics that are not meaningful to strategy, that are not meaningful to any enablement processes, the conversation remains broken and will never go any farther.
Yeah, I think for a long time people had the question of how do we teach directors enough technology that they can ask the right questions? And I think that's the wrong approach.
Agreed.
We should be teaching technologists a bit more of how to function in a boardroom.
Correct.
Which is that's something that certainly I've found in my past. I imagine the experience has been the same for you in your career.
Yes, absolutely.
You just talked about frameworks a bit for directors. What tools are there out there? What techniques do you think are relevant for directors at the moment?
For directors, there is a specific guidance from the Australian government, external entities like the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States, and the traditional ISO 27001 frameworks. These are important, and the importance for directors is really to view these frameworks, whatever framework you might choose to adopt, to be able to grow and to enable processes that will take you where you want to be in a very controlled way. So it's not technology that is being enabled on its own. It's business, process, technology, and data, of course, becomes the most important enabler. So it's all about understanding the organizational goals, is understanding the objectives, is understanding obligations. You mentioned initially fiduciary obligations. And we always need to consider the fundamental constraints that we have, like mandatory ransomware reporting, for example, that was enabled only last month.
So boards have a responsibility financially around an organisation. They have to manage risk. We've introduced technology now. How do you see them balancing the requirement for security, which, let's face it, is just an expense for a business? You spend lots of money on security. It's a little bit like insurance. You don't actually make a profit out of it. It's an expense versus the other activities that actually can generate revenue. How do you see them balancing that?
It's something that needs to be put into perspective because the right balance is required. So from a board perspective, you're right, it's not about implementing standard A or standard B. It's not about implementing 200 controls or 1,000 controls. So what is important is to understand the enablement that is required to protect the critical assets that the organization needs for growth. And that is, in my view, where boards should be focusing in these days. The organization is going to grow. So yes, we are going to expand on the digital economy quite heavily. How do we do that? What are the cyber threats? And from there, from that alignment, we can cascade down the specific requirements that we need for the organization from a cyber perspective, beginning from the very beginning, from the planning phase, not as an aftermath consideration.
Okay. One of the things you touched on a moment ago was data. And one of the things I've always liked, particularly around things like CPS 234, was the view of data as an information asset as being the critical substance. It's not an application. You're only hardening applications to prevent access to the data and drawing that dividing line between securing data and securing an application. Do you think many organizations understand that today, or are they still focusing on it's all about applications?
I think when we look at what's happening in the marketplace, we come with both sides of the stories. There are Certainly, banks leading in this front, they are the biggest users of technology. They understand the value of data very well. But that understanding probably has not gone to the other levels. Smaller companies, smaller organizations, to the point where many organizations don't have even backups. I'm talking about small organizations, and they prefer to pay a ransom when the event occurs. So
That's just scary.
it's very scary, very scary. Hard to believe, but it's a reality. It's a reality check, where cyber is not at the forefront of the governance radar.
Yeah. I think the worst company we've ever found there was a company that helped people discharge their debts, that took all of their past banking and financial information, digitized it all onto one machine that was directly connected to the internet. Yeah.
Yes, and
no
the story
backups.
goes on. Yes.
Exactly. No backups, no understanding. It was just, it was quite shocking to us. Fortunately, it's not too hard to fix that sort of thing when it's that far bad. Have you got any examples where you've seen cyber more as a business enabler than as a cost to get away from this whole insurance problem?
Yes, look, I'll give you an example, and it's something very close to me. I was working at the time with New South Wales government, and as soon as I joined, it became quite apparent the amount of phishing activity affecting the taxpayers. And when I look at this problem, it was not affecting one or two agencies. It was affecting the whole of New South Wales. And in fact, if we look at this at a macro level, affects all of Australian agencies.
Yep.
So at the time, I came up with a solution design for a very innovative solution to be able to authenticate the senders. And this is going through the validation of DNS records to demonstrate that the sender is the person who claims to be, not just someone who's spoofing an email. In that context, that was one of the biggest risks at the time for New South Wales government. Organizations, criminals were spoofing the New South Wales government domain to trick taxpayers to go into fraudulent websites. And the whole purpose was to perpetuate crime.
Yeah.
So at the time, I came up with this solution. And when I presented this solution, it was approved, not just for my agency, but for the whole state of New South Wales. And I think this is one of the imperatives that we had at the time, that 70% of all transactions had to be completed in digital format. So by enabling this capability, we were contributing, we were enabling the New South Wales government to reach that organizational goal.
Yeah, if you can keep away the spam, then the amount of time dealing with spam goes down and the efficiency of everything else therefore goes up.
Correct,
And you can
yes.
focus on the task. No, that's a good example, thank you. There's been a lot of discussion, speaking of verification, lately around MFA. We've recently had the problem with the superannuation funds, only to find that many of them didn't have any form of MFA. Do you have any thoughts on MFA or authentication that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. So first of all, it was very sad to see that situation in superannuation funds. They manage large amounts of money, funds, and to understand that they didn't have one of the basic controls is a brutal reality check. MFA is essential because it authenticates the person that you claim. One of the legacies of the last century is the ability to create a password, create an account, and away you go. The reality is passwords are certainly inefficient. And as we move into the first half of 2025, we will find that organizations will move away from passwords altogether. But where we are today, MFA is a must-have for all organizations. We need to build solutions that are MFA robust, by doing that, you will be able to authenticate individuals. Not just a one check, it will be multiple checks during your activity. If you're moving away from your normal way of work, there will be adaptive MFA, which will challenge. Are you the person who claims to be? If the answer is yes, answer this challenge. You get the MFA prompt, you respond, and you move on, which an attacker will be completely limited to do that.
Yeah.
So MFA is essential, and passwordless authentications is just another variation of that level of sophistication.
I was just going to ask you about passwordless. If the super funds have to move from nothing to MFA, should they be looking to moving to MFA or passwordless in the one go?
Yes. So there are two components. One is the authentication mechanisms for customers, and the other one is authentication mechanisms for staff, for employees. Yep. So two different groups of individuals. When we're talking about customers, we're dealing with thousands, tens of thousands customers. When we are talking about staff, we are talking about a reduced number of people. But nevertheless, the principle applies for both.
Yeah.
Yes.
I understand from the super's point of view that there is a real challenge with some Australians. They were talking about one particular group where there may be 60 people in a village all sharing a phone, and that makes some of the challenges very difficult. But I believe we need to find a solution to that, not simply carve them out and say, well, that's too hard, we won't do anything. How do we try to build a store that supports biometrics for 60 people to actually still enable them to solve that problem? I think for too long we've thrown this into the too hard basket. Those days are gone. We now have to fix it.
Totally agree. The time has come.
Yep. No idea more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Yeah, but passwordless authentication is also very close to my heart. Why is that passwordless authentication has not been implemented in many organizations? Large organizations consume Microsoft as an example, Microsoft software. And passwordless authentication has been at the very least for the last 10, 15 years.
Yep.
And there are constraints, yes, understand those technology constraints. So these are the enablement changes, transformational changes that organizations need to discuss to align business objectives with the need to refresh legacy equipment, which is the biggest constraint to enable all these technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just internally here, we have taken all of our internal devices, plugged them into an identity provider that now supports passwordless through things like Radius. So even some of the older devices go for Radius authentication, which it translates into a passwordless request, comes back and you get your Radius granted.
Right.
So it's actually, you would think it would be a barrier, and would be, some of the legacy gear would be very expensive, but by choosing the right sort of platforms, you can actually passwordless enable a lot of devices that normally wouldn't support it.
That's right.
And we've been very pleasantly surprised at how well it works.
Very good.
Yeah,
Very good.
So it need not be the barrier people think it is. We touched earlier too on third-party risks. All industry works together. It's a much bigger ecosystem. So how do you see people working towards third-party certification, even up to fourth-party certification? There's been a big push. People send out lists of 100, 200 questions. It's clearly not sustainable. We can't have every organisation sending each other lists of 200 questions hoping for good answers. How are we going to get past that? How are we going to build a better way of assessing third parties?
I think there is still room for asking the right questions. Where is my data? Where is it going to be hosted? Who is going to access my data? And there are other things that can be automated. Today we have cloud security posture management that can give me, using a number of frameworks, the level of security compliance that the platform has to offer. So I think that will be probably phasing out the traditional questionnaires, because you pointed out the right thing. It's not sustainable, and organizations cannot be completing these questionnaires to provide an accurate answer of what's happening in the environment is far removed from reality.
Absolutely. Particularly when you will get 10 different requests from 10 different contractors or suppliers or clients, and all 10 have a different set of questions. Do you think there's any role there for government standardization of that sort of?
I believe so. I particularly use a framework that is used in the United States. It's called the Cloud Security Alliance, that provides 261 questions. These are standard questions. And every question has an objective that is tied to NIST, is tied to ISO and other frameworks as well. So it's very easy, because all you need to do is to ask for the vendor, and big vendors are available to give this off the shelf. No? And that's probably one way to fast track responses. Expecting a smaller company to provide those questions is mission impossible.
Yeah, I think to the earlier point, if you have 10 people who send you 10 questionnaires, but all 10 questionnaires are the CSA, then it becomes much easier to have one set of answers you give to everybody.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
That makes a lot more sense. The same question around SaaS platforms. So we're seeing an increasing shift towards SaaS platforms. How would you recommend companies go about ensuring that the SaaS platforms they use are actually secure and that they understand them and have sufficient controls? Are there any particular catches or problems that you see?
Yes, sometimes we think that by using a SaaS platform, the platform is going to deliver the services that we expect, always in a secure fashion. That's not always the case. So there are things that organizations should be doing, and that is by using cloud security software to detect not just the indicators of attack, but also the indicators of misconfiguration. We can have an excellent platform that is not tuned up to its full potential because we have omitted to optimize all the security features. And by doing that, we are providing an ecosystem check for our tenancy, not just for one application, but for all the applications that are managed within that cloud tenancy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd be very curious to see how we get to a point where me scanning a provider's environment and reporting what I find is seen as us working together to make the environment better. The moment there's a degree of, are you trying to blame me for something? And we need to get past that into, oh, thanks for pointing that out, we'll fix that straight away. I think that's going to revolve a bit of a reset of the mindset.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
It's going to be a challenge.
I think the journey has started, but it's a long journey.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of our big challenges at the moment. It's very easy to get new technology, put it on a forklift and take it into an environment, no problem. The people change management is where we're starting to run into the bigger hurdles. For a long time, every 6 months there'd be a new set of firewalls, a new set of security software, a new set of antiviral tools, and you simply installed the new one and it was a leap ahead of the old one. Now, while that's still sort of happening, it's slowed down, and the weakest link now, as we were discussing earlier, is now becoming the humans, and that's where the attackers are starting to focus their efforts. Correct.
Humans are the weakest link in the whole delivery chain process, no doubt.
Yeah, it's. I think we're going to move away from cybersecurity as a purely technical discipline, which it never really has been, but it has been seen as a piece of technology, into potentially putting parts of cybersecurity into HR or people in compliance, and starting to talk about it as education and assessment and ongoing operational requirement for people more than just technology.
Correct, absolutely right.
Okay, it's going to be an interesting future for that. Okay. I'm going to jump to the people a bit more. So, if we're saying people are the next frontier of cybersecurity, how does that fit with managers? How do we make that work with senior managers, management teams? How do we try to work that into the roles and responsibilities of these people now has to extend to include making sure their staff are cyber ready?
And that's a good point, John, because it's not staff, it's including managers, it's including directors, it's including the CEO, it's including everybody who is interacting with the system. And one way to achieve this goal is by including everybody in the phishing simulations.
Yep.
Leading organizations will conduct at least one phishing simulation per month. And not just using one template, they will be using multiple templates. Because it's very easy, I received the phishing simulation for this month, and they share the news with their colleagues.
Absolutely.
But if we use multiple templates, then you will be able to see the different reactions. On the one side, we will see, we will identify objectively who are the clickers.
Mm-hmm.
And we can tailor the programs, the training programs to those behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
We will be able to see who is acknowledging this as a threat and is reporting this as a phish. And we should reward them.
Yep.
Very often we look at the other side of the coin, who is not doing it, and we punish those individuals. But we also need to recognize that people do the right thing. And when they do, they need to be rewarded as such.
Yeah, I've seen organisations reward them with everything from chocolate frogs to bonus points. One of the things that we've seen come out of phishing campaigns is a much better understanding of your organisation, to the extent that if I send out 1,000 phishing attempts in a campaign and I get 10% of them reported, then I can actually take that to mean for any phishing that comes through, only 10% is being reported. So now, if I get 200 reports of real phishing, I can probably fairly safely say that represents 10% of the real phishing that's going on. Now I have an idea of my phishing attempts. If I know how many of my test attempts were successful, and I now know how many wild attempts I have, I can start to get a handle on how many wild attempts are probably being successful over time. And that's led to some very powerful conversations, particularly going back to things like MFA, because if I phished a username and password from someone, the MFA is the only thing preventing me. We had one customer we looked at, and it was something like 3 or 4 accounts a week were being compromised based on statistics, and it was the MFA was the only thing protecting people. It's just so crucial.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. When we do the phishing simulations, yes, of course, we will have people who failed, but in reality, we have that control, which is called MFA.
Yeah, it's important for a lot of different reasons.
Yes, best practice around phishing is identifying or defining human resilience. So human resilience is a metric that has 2 components. In the denominator, you'll have people who reported the phish. And in the denominator, you have the people who clicked. So best practice is around to have 14 as the standard goal. And that will probably defines that 70% of the population are reporting phishing attempts, and only 5% or less are clicking on the link. So that has been a golden rule that has been there for a number of years, and many organizations are far away from that performance.
Yes. It's a real challenging area getting people to click and not simply say, I realized it was spam, I didn't go into it. No, it has to be reported. One of the big things there we found is if you report it, you protect the people around you.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a very powerful one. So one thing we've just talked about was the role of regulation in third-party assessment. We're seeing those regulations change very quickly at the moment. I think when when doctors first arrived in New South Wales 200 years ago, there was a period of about 50 years before regulation came, and it's kept getting stronger ever since. When the first aeroplane took off, it was about 20 years until the regulations came in, and it's kept getting more regulated ever since. Now we've been struggling with cyber for a couple of decades. We're starting to see stronger regulations coming in, and I have no doubt they're going to continue to grow. Where do you think the government's going to take it, and how do you think companies should be ready?
Regulation is important, and what we find today, not just in Australia but in the Western world, is we have more regulations that we possibly need. And sometimes these regulations overlap each other. And I think the role of the government is to simplify all those reporting structures. We need to aim for less, but for more effective regulations that could protect us in a better way, at an affordable cost. Regulations involve overheads. There is no doubt. So if we have too many regulations like we have today, we have to increase unnecessarily budgets that potentially could be used to enable controls that are required to align the objectives of the organization with cybersecurity trends.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The government's fear of regulatory burden on small companies is causing them to slow down some of the enforcement, which in turn is leaving opportunities for attackers open for longer than they should be, which is unfortunate. But on the other side, you can't rush in and regulate before you've actually got the hang of what you're trying to regulate. There will need to be a file balance over the years.
Yes.
Do you see the government continuing to strengthen the laws, or a plateau for a while?
Look, I don't see a strong leadership from government. So this needs to come from the Australian government, and then it will cascade down all the way through. We have a vision to become one of the safest places on Earth by the end of the decade. We are far away from that goal. It looks to me like a positive intent, but more needs to be done to be able to reach that aspiration.
I agree with you completely. All the wishful thinking and hopes won't actually count.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder sometimes how we will strike a balance in Australia between the need to have a good framework well laid out that everyone can follow versus rushing in quickly, having disparate standards, pushing huge costs onto people for compliance. It's something we often talk to people about, is how you will roll this through. We could forklift all the technology in right now, but unless your people are using it, unless it's implemented properly, it's no point. Build a plan that takes time but gets it embedded into your organisation, you'll get a much better result. So.
That's right. Yeah. So you mentioned a bit earlier about the superannuation funds.
Yes.
And the reality is, for many years, organizations have been driven by this compliance thinking.
Yep.
Compliance is important. It's going to be with us in the foreseeable future. There is no doubt. But compliance on its own will not deter, will not stop cyber attacks.
Absolutely.
It's really the cyber strategy, the thinking, the resilience, and the adaptability that will take us where we need to be.
It isn't something you buy, it isn't something you do, it's a way you think.
Correct.
And we need to teach people to think that way. That's going to be a real challenge. One of the things that's going to help us meet that challenge, or perhaps make it more challenging, is AI. How do you see AI intersecting with security?
It's like a two-edged sword. On the one side, it provides fantastic opportunities for innovation, for growth, particularly in the areas of automation. Using voice commands now, you can do far more than what you were able to do 5 years ago, and producing better outcomes. But the same technology can also be used for the wrong purposes. And we need to be aware that people can impersonate you quite easily. You only need 3 less than 3 seconds to produce 95% your voice in an accurate fashion. And that is scary. So AI is certainly a very important enabler. There is no doubt. But we need to provide the safeguards to be able to exploit that new technology to be able to reach our end destination.
Yes, it's going to be a very challenging technology.
No doubt.
I think you talked about the rapid adoption or the rapid simulation. Once upon a time, they needed an hour of your voice to be able to simulate. Now, on just a couple of seconds, they build a model of your voice box and how your voice box would work. Therefore, things you have never said, notes you have ever struck, they can simulate because they have a model of your voice box, which I found to be a wonderful solution to the problem. Forget trying to figure out how every word would sound and just build a model of the thing that makes the sound, and you're away.
Yes.
It's going to be very scary. So we've seen AI coming in, we've talked about some of the challenges of third parties. What areas do you see for innovation in this whole challenge?
For me, in this specific area, we need to see a major transformation in the way we authenticate. We talked earlier about MFA, passwordless authentication, but moving on to the next phase, we need to see a completely changed landscape. And to me, that will be driven by the way we claim to authenticate to systems, to platforms. And it will be a wide range of aspects that today we don't use. It will be a combination of biometrics, could be a combination of things that you own, like wearables, more general speaking, and ways that will uniquely identify you as the person who claims to be. That is the biggest problem that organizations are facing in the cyber field today.
Do you see any role for the government identification services to verify your identity? There's been talk about tokenization. So I receive my authentication material, I pass it to the government, they authenticate it, pass me back a token, I can throw the material away and I just keep the token that says, yes, the government verified this was the real person. Do you see those as being a part of the solution or just a nice to have, or they won't help at all?
I think there will be, it's too early to call. I think that whole process will evolve. It has to evolve to make it more bulletproof.
Yeah.
I think we are seeing what is potentially available, but we need to go beyond that proof of value, that proof of concept, into a productionized solution.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how the government can keep up with the pace of innovation in that space. They could very quickly find they've put a lot of money into a technology that's been taken over by the private sector. And if it is in the private sector, can it bring the same, I suppose, the same results that a government agency that already knows who you are and should be able to verify you? We'll wait and see how that pans out.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been a very insightful conversation. I'd like to thank Marco Figueroa for helping us navigate the strategic and operational layers of cybersecurity. For directors tuning in, now's the time to sharpen your cyber lens. It's not just a tech issue, it's a leadership one that will require cooperation across the business to solve.
John, thank you very much. The pleasure has been mine.
Thank you, Marco.